This video tutorial will help you understand how to prepare the determination of a chemical formula lab, in other words, the zinc iodine lab. In this lab, you will be reacting metallic zinc with iodine to produce the ionic compound zinc iodide. Your purpose or your goal is to try to determine what the formula is when these two elements combine. And if you take a look at the general reaction, we have Zn plus I2 yields ZnX IY. And your goal is to define those subscripts X and Y. By carefully accounting for the masses of the reactants and the products, so keeping track of how much zinc you use and how much iodine you use, and then determining how much is left at the end of the reaction, you'll be able to determine the chemical formula. It's kind of like the empirical formula process where we will have grams of the elements, we'll change grams to moles, and then divide by small to get the empirical formula. In this lab, we'll be starting out with 2 grams of zinc and 2 grams of iodine. And we will use methanol in the beginning of the lab to dissolve the iodine. And iodine, when it's dissolved, will be kind of a soy sauce brown color. And as the reaction proceeds, as the iodine reacts with the zinc, we will see the brown color start to fade to kind of a yellow, and then the yellow will fade to pale yellow, and eventually it should be colorless. And at this point, because of the lack of the color, the brown color any longer, we will know that the iodine completely reacted, that we used all approximately 2 grams up, and it's gone, and then there will be some zinc remaining, which we will visibly see as the zinc granules in the bottom of the flask. For your background section, be sure to include the general reaction listed and explain how the concept of limiting and excess applies to this process, or to how that method will be used for this lab. The safety section, be sure to include the 2 major safety warnings referenced in the lab handout. I believe they are both in bold. The procedure, I would write your procedure in the 2-column format, much like the copper lab, so that you can record your observations for each part of the lab as you complete it. And so that means when you get to the procedure, you will, on the left side of your lab, write up in the left part of the left column, you'll describe the steps you're going to be carrying out, and then there's space over on the right for you to record observations and data. Like the copper lab also, there are some questions that should be included with your procedure. However, some of them I think are really unnecessary to actually write out in your procedure. They're more just helpful steps to determine how to analyze the data. So this is what I would recommend. For step 1, these are the questions that are included in the lab handout. I don't think it's necessary to write them as questions. What I would do instead is maybe put something in your procedure, you know, enter the mass of zinc into your table, or subtract the mass of the flask from the mass of the zinc plus flask to complete the data table. Same thing for iodine. So it's up to you. If you want to write those 2 questions, you can. I don't think it'll be necessary because they really just explain how to complete this data table. That data table should be included in your procedure right at this point, so it's a handy place to organize your data. I would put it on the right-hand column. You could use that as kind of your observation place if you're following the 2-column format. Step 2, I would include the questions listed in step 2 of the procedure, and there are quite a few of them. And these first set of questions are on the first part of I think on one page of the handout. Those are fine. And in the second part, on the next part of the handout, there are some other questions as well. So all those questions for part 2 should be included in your notebook. Step 3, there are no questions included. Step 4, I would say, is somewhat similar to step 1. I don't think you really need to include these questions in your procedure because the first one talks about, you know, is the zinc in the flask white? If so, then you need to rinse and decant a little bit more. I think that really should be in your procedure, that direction, rather than listing it as a question that you would answer for me to grade. The other sets of questions that are found a little later in part 4 talk about how to analyze your data or how to fill out your data table. So I would I would leave those out. It's up to you. Again, those are optional if you want to include them on how to calculate the data. So to recap, the only questions that you are required to include in your procedure would be the questions in step 2. Step 1, they can be omitted as long as you know how to figure out your data table. Step 2, there are several questions and you should include all of those. 3, there were no questions, and 4, again, I think these are more procedural things than actual questions to answer. After the procedure, there should be a data section, and the preliminaries table right here that is found on the front page of the lab handout, that data table should go in there at this time, and you'll be using the masses from the other smaller data table, and they'll be added to this kind of overall data table as well, so make sure that is in there before you come to lab. And then after we complete the lab, we will be using, there are 2 different options to analyze your data and determine the formula for zinc iodide. We will be using option number 1, and after that analysis portion, which is technically your calculations, then you will have a conclusion section, and that would be the remainder of the lab. That's it. If you have any questions, please email me or let me know. Have a great day.